Hundreds of thousands of families could be plunged into fuel poverty. From October, the biggest hike in energy bills in a decade. Charities are warning many will be left struggling.
It's a perfect storm. Already we're seeing large numbers of people experiencing great hardship, and we're really worried that come the autumn, universal credit will reduce, the fuel bills will go up and furlough will end.
Also tonight, Laura Kenny makes Olympic history, golds in 3 consecutive games and the most decorated female British athlete. The government defends Climate Minister Alok Sharma, accused of hypocrisy after visiting a string of red list countries. And a stay of execution denied for the Alpaca, ordered to be destroyed after testing positive for bovine TB.
This is the ITV Evening News with Lucrezia Millarini.
Good evening. For thousands of people living on or near the breadline, the battle to feed, clothe and keep their families warm this winter suddenly got much harder. 15 million UK households face a rise in their annual energy bills of at least £139 after the energy watchdog allowed a big price hike. Up to 500,000 households could be plunged into fuel poverty. Well, the industry blames rising wholesale costs, but critics say those who can afford it least are the ones who will pay. Our economics editor, Joel Hills, reports.
What's on it?
Anthony Lyman is a single parent with 2 children. He's one of 4 million people in the UK with a prepayment meter at his home. His bills are capped but set to rise sharply, and he's worried he'll struggle to cope.
That's a real thing that I face as a single parent, because my children have to come first, and they have to have heat, they have to have food, and they have to be able to live a comfortable and safe life.
The increase in the energy price cap will affect 15 million households. The majority on standard variable or default tariffs will see their energy bills rise by £139 a year, while those who have prepayment accounts will see an increase of £153. Ofgem says the cap needs to rise because since February, the wholesale market price of both gas and electricity has surged.
We accept this is going to put many families in difficult circumstances.
You are putting the price cap up as we head into winter and people reach for the central heating. Couldn't you have at least waited until spring?
Well, we can't ask companies to sell energy for less than they buy. The alternative to making this change would be seeing companies unable to supply the energy we need, and that is definitely an outcome that
companies would go bust if you don't do this.
Well, not only would companies would go bust, they wouldn't be able to buy the energy that we need.
At Citizens Advice, the calls are already coming in.
How can I help you today?
It estimates that 2 million households are already struggling to pay their energy bills and expects that number to rise.
It's a perfect storm. Already we're seeing large numbers of people experiencing great hardship, and we're really worried that come the autumn, universal credit will reduce, the fuel bills will go up and furlough will end.
Chicken's winning.
The timing of this is unfortunate. The cost of living generally is rising. The advice to Anthony and everyone else who's worried about energy bills is seek help, talk to your supplier, shop around and switch if you can.
And Joel, some of these energy companies are making huge profits. Why can't they absorb some of these costs?
Well, the regulator, Ofgem, argues that they simply cannot afford to, thanks in part to the energy price cap that it introduced, which means that suppliers are barely making any money selling us gas and electricity as it stands. Now, the cap, Ofgem says, needs to increase so they can cover the rising costs because the wholesale prices gone up. That's arguably not the case in the case of some of the bigger suppliers. If you look at EDF, at Centrica, which owns British Gas, if you look at Scottish Power, they also produce gas and electricity and are therefore highly profitable. But the price cap doesn't take that into account. We were warned yesterday by the Bank of England. We face a squeeze on our living standards. This is evidence of that, I'm afraid. Rising inflation hits those on the lowest incomes the hardest. The government's going to come under an enormous amount of pressure in the months to come, not to phase out the uplift to universal credit, I suspect.
OK, Joel, thank you. If you want to find out how you can bring your energy bills down, there is a guide on our website, itv.com/news. Women led the way for Britain on another dramatic day at the Olympics today. Cyclist Laura Kenny became the first female Briton to win gold at 3 consecutive games, while Kate French won the modern pentathlon. But the men's sprint relay team were agonisingly pipped to the track gold. Well, from Tokyo, our sports editor, Steve Scott.
Laura Kenny, the queen of the track and the first British female Olympian to strike gold at 3 successive games. Her pairing with Katie Archibald today, untouchable. The Madison is a chaotic relay full of intermittent sprints, and because of the traffic, spectacular crashes. But the British duo just powered through the mayhem, dominating throughout on their way to cycling history.
Start to finish.
Oh, I love the team pursuit, but it was giving me fears like I've never had before. Whereas once that was out of the way, it's almost hard to say, but I felt relieved because the one race I really wanted to do was coming, and all of a sudden we went and did it.
While new sports may have caught the eye in Tokyo, the modern pentathlon was first introduced in 1912. A combination of swimming, fencing, show jumping on a horse selected at random, and then finally the run and shoot. Britain's Kate French showing the rest of the field a clean pair of heels for gold.
Olympic champion here in Tokyo 2020.
Laura Muir's decision to concentrate solely on the 1500 metres for these games paid off tonight. In the run of her life, she smashed her personal best and finished with silver.
But Laura Muir!
A more popular medal in Team GB's athletics team might be hard to come by. Britain's women kept the success in the Olympic Stadium ticking along. Dina Asher-Smith's injured hamstring held strong, and Daryl Neater chased down the Jamaicans and American sprint teams for the last place on the podium. They were followed by the men who came agonisingly close to nailing a golden run. Nathaniel Mitchell-Blake began the anchor leg in front, but was just edged out on the line by Italy. He was not an easy man to console as it all started to sink in. But at last, there was something for GB's athletics team to celebrate together. So it has definitely been a day when Britain's women have taken centre stage, and one in particular, Laura Kenny, who, with another medal in her final run on Sunday, will make history all over again. Steve Scott, ITV News, Tokyo.
Well, here a senior government minister was criticised today for flying to 6 red list countries without quarantining. They were among 30 places visited by Alok Sharma, the minister responsible for a forthcoming climate summit in Britain. The government says ministers on essential travel are exempt from quarantine. As our political correspondent Shihab Khan reports.
From Qatar to Bangladesh to Turkey and Bolivia, Alok Sharma has had quite a year so far, visiting more than 30 countries without needing to quarantine upon return. The man tasked with preparing for the COP26 summit has been jet-setting around the world, and Labour say it reeks of hypocrisy.
To not be setting a good example by flying all over the world, and by the way, another example of one rule for them and another rule for us.
A large number of the 31 countries Mr Sharma visited are on the amber list, but he also went to a handful of red list countries where anyone returning should quarantine in a government-approved hotel for 10 days. Back in March, he visited Qatar. In April, he was in the United Arab Emirates. Then in June, he spent time in Bangladesh and Turkey. And now he's in South America, where he's so far been to Bolivia and Brazil.
Alok is the COP international president, and he has a huge job signing up countries all over the world to these very, very strong commitments. And that can only be really achieved by these kind of really strong collaborative conversations.
Ministers doing official work are exempt from quarantine if they need to go to a red list country. But that's not the case for the rest of us, like Lynn Lotter, who has to isolate in this hotel after returning from South Africa following the death of her mother.
It makes me furious. Why should he get away with not quarantining when others who, have to? We don't have a choice.
Mr Sharma hasn't broken any rules, but the question is, can he bat away the accusations of hypocrisy that are being thrown at him? Shihab Khan, ITV News, Westminster.
Hello and welcome to ITV News.
The teenage mother who allowed her baby girl to starve to death while she left home for 6 days to party was jailed for 9 years today. Verfi Kudi admitted the manslaughter of her daughter, Asia, who was just 20 months old. Kudi left her at home while she went to London and the West Midlands to celebrate her 18th birthday. A post-mortem decided that Asia died from neglect. The mother of the convicted terrorist shot dead by police as he attacked passers-by with a knife gave emotional testimony at his inquest today. Halima Khan said she had no idea that her son, Sudesh Aman, was about to commit a violent act. Well, Sangeeta Lal is at court for us this evening. Sangeeta, what else was said today?
Well, today we heard more from Sudesh Aman's mother, who said about the last moments she spoke to her son just a few minutes before that attack. She said they chatted about him being at the shops and he ended the phone call saying he loved her. But half an hour later, Aman went into a shop, stole a knife and stabbed 2 people while wearing a fake suicide vest and was then shot dead by police. His mother, Halima, says she had no idea, though, that he was about to attack, but knew instantly it was her son when she heard it on the news. Now, in the days leading up to that attack, Aman was under constant surveillance, and the senior officer in charge of that operation spoke today too, having to defend his undercover work, though, because 2 days before the attack, Aman was seen in a shop buying items which he then later used to make the fake suicide belt. But the officer said at the time he couldn't have enough evidence to arrest him. Instead, they chose to monitor him, a decision which Aman's family lawyers said was wrong, and more evidence will now be heard on Monday as the inquest continues.
OK, Sangeeta, thank you. Still to come on the ITV Evening News. The latest in our special series on Britain's Afghan war veterans, still suffering in many different ways. Plus, the man and his dog on reaching their Everest in Warwickshire. Those stories and more after the break. Welcome back. The suffering of Afghan war veterans from post-traumatic stress disorder has been widely reported, but veterans experience the aftermath of combat in many different ways, some less well understood. For the latest in our series, Afghanistan Photo from the Front Line, we asked 35 of the paratroopers in this picture whether their mental health has been affected. More than half said yes. Paul Davies met 2 of them, Nick Quinton and Evan Davies. His report contains details you may find upsetting.
East Sussex might be a world record, but Nick Quinton is one of those who freely admits he carries with him the things he saw and experienced during his time with 3 Para in Helmand Province. In particular, the faces of the innocents caught up in a deadly conflict.
Women and children were killed through the actions that we'd taken as a force, and everyone knows that happens, but to see it is a completely different ball game, and to see kids and things, you struggle to comprehend it, and you struggle to come to terms with the reality of the situation that you're in.
Now a performance coach and paramedic in Brighton, he's not surprised so many former comrades are struggling with their mental health.
You can't prepare in any way to look in the eyes of a mother who's just lost her child to actions that have been taken by your force, the side that you're on, whether you're directly involved or not. And those are the incidents that guys, when they come back, have real problems with and struggle to overcome.
Evan Davies says he's in a better place now, able to enjoy life as a musician and electrical engineer in Bristol. But his time with 3 Para in Helmand almost cost him his life and left deep mental scars.
There were so many close calls with, rounds coming, ridiculously close to my head, RPGs, bombs. It was a constant ordeal, and it was on my mind all the time, when is my time up?
On returning to the UK, the Afghan experience and a family loss combined, His response, heavy drinking and an attempt to take his own life.
Bought loads of pills and decided then I was going to go back to my room, eat all these pills, down some vodka, go to sleep and be done with it. Yeah, I did it. But then just a few minutes later, I started thinking, you know, I've made a mistake here. So I had to phone one of my friends, chucked me in his van, speeded me up to the hospital to get them to sort me out. But even then, I wasn't really able to discuss why I did it or how I was feeling, what brought me to that point.
The impact of post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, is better understood today, and it's one of several mental health conditions still affecting the lives of those who served in Afghanistan. Something few could have foreseen as they arrived on that faraway front line and posed for souvenir photographs.
Everyone that went to that country, they brought Afghanistan back with them, and I think left a bit of themselves over there as well.
Two Afghan veterans talking to our correspondent Paul Davies, and there is more on our series online at itv.com/photo from the front line, where you can also find details of how to get help if you're affected by any of the issues discussed. A big row's blown up over an alpaca named Geronimo who tested positive for bovine tuberculosis after being brought to the UK from New Zealand. Geronimo's owner is threatening to stand in the way of anyone sent to destroy him, but today the government ruled out further tests despite support from campaigners Joanna Lumley and Chris Packham. Stacey Foster reports.
Time is running out for Geronimo the alpaca. The government's told his owner he must be killed after testing positive for TB. Helen MacDonald took her case to the High Court and lost, meaning he must be slaughtered immediately.
I cannot consent to have a healthy animal euthanized. If they come in and, you know, with a gun and do whatever they're going to do, then I can't be a party to that either.
Geronimo was tested for TB twice in 2017 when he came to this farm in Gloucestershire from New Zealand. Since then, he's been living in isolation, awaiting his fate. Helen believes both tests were false positives because he's still alive and showing no signs of disease.
I don't know whether they will turn up when I'm asleep. I'm worried about what happens when Geronimo is faced with strangers and how his final moments may end if they come in here without talking to me.
The spokesperson for DEFRA said while it sympathises with Miss MacDonald, there is nothing more that can be done.
If the animal is likely to be a zoonotic risk, so a risk of giving infections to humans, we really do need to treat them all in the same fashion. Unfortunately, in this case, it causes real distress for the person involved. That is also often true for farmers whose cows come down with TB.
Geronimo's owner says legally, government vets could turn up at any time. She's vowed to stand in their way if they do. Stacey Foster, ITV News.
It was confirmed today that Wales will move to COVID alert level 0 from 6 a.m. tomorrow. It means restrictions on meeting others are removed and nightclubs can be open, but masks will still be a legal requirement in many places. Finally, each of us has our own personal Everest. For David Adams, who is blind and nearly 78, it is a hill in Warwickshire. He and his guide dog Jimbo have climbed it so many times this weekend they'll reach the equivalent of the Himalayan peak, as Martha Fairley explains.
When David Adams lost his sight completely 8 years ago, even lacing up his boots became a challenge. But with Labrador Jimbo and Sherpa Charlotte, he's reaching new heights, climbing Marston Hill almost 200 times in the first virtual ascent of Mount Everest by a guide dog.
We get bikes coming down at high speed. I have to get out of the way, and I'm never sure whether there's a ditch or a bank to get off the road into or over. So Charlotte acts as my Sherpa and guides me into the right place at the right time. We feel that's like an avalanche coming down, yeah, and we've got to get out of the way of that before it takes us over.
We first met David and Jimbo taking a rare day off at Royal Ascot. Since March, they've climbed through snow, rain and heatwave. Now they're 2 walks away from the summit. And what does Jimbo think about it?
He loves it. He gets a treat at the bend and a treat at the bench. So he's quite happy and he loves to be outside walking.
He's quite a young dog. Takes him to the bench at the top, stops at the grass where it goes up a little bit. And yeah, so he doesn't fall over. It's really good.
David's fundraising for 3 charities, aiming for £1 million target started by his son Simon, who died of motor neurone disease 10 years ago. On Sunday, David's 78th birthday, they'll make the final ascent. A man and his guide dog who went up a hill 197 times and came down a mountain. Martha Fairley, ITV News, Warwickshire.
And that is all for now. Charlene will be here with news at 10, just after 10:20 tonight. But from everyone here, bye-bye.